Thanks for having interest in exploring the nuances and dimensions of the pastor's life. Whether you've been called to pastoral ministry or whether you are currently a pastor in ministry, exploring these things, I trust and pray, will deepen your understanding of both yourself, your calling, and your mission as a servant of God, leading the church, forming it, and expanding the kingdom. So I'm really glad you're taking time, and I hope that you're taking seriously the assignments after each one of these sessions. Today, I want to talk with you about the subject of inside out. Now, I know that every one of us has probably at some point in our lives, we've taken off our shirt or we've taken off a sweatshirt and we happen to pull it off so that it winds up inside out. And you take a look at the inside of your shirt or the coat or the sweatshirt, and you begin to see the construction of how this sweatshirt is made, especially if you have a big logo on the chest or on the lapel of some kind. You begin to see how that logo was put in place. And you realize that it is largely due to what is inside that allows the outside to exhibit the beautiful logo or the image or whatever it is. Often it's sewn on and you can see the stitches on the backside. It's not the part that you show necessarily, but without that inside, you wouldn't have anything to show. Well, in the pastor's life, that same principle applies. Matter of fact, when we come through this first chapter of Mark, and as you know, we're kind of walking through chapter 1 of Mark as a structure for understanding the pastor's life. When we come to verse 21 through 28, we begin to see how Jesus, although encountering the man with the unclean spirit, we see the dimensions of Jesus' identity and his ministry. And you begin to read phrases like, he was one who has authority, not as the scribes. And the implication here is that there are people who want to put on a facade or put on a persona or put on an image, but there's no substance behind it. Elsewhere, of course, in the Gospels, Jesus talks about that in terms of whitewashed tombs. Here, he's talking about the deep inner authority. And of course, the unclean spirit names Jesus. I know who you are. And Jesus is a new teaching with authority. And that authority is something that doesn't come from the delivery mechanism, from the tone of voice, the choice of words, the intonations, nor even the personal charisma, but it comes from within, from deep within. In effect, then, the pastor's life requires that inside-out dimension. Now, if you've read any of some of the writings that I've written or the book called The Integrity Factor, you know that I like to talk about the iceberg metaphor. The integrity factor is where I introduce that metaphor, that analogy, where we discover that who we are is not always visible to those with whom we engage. In other words, what we do is a reflection of who we are. The top of the iceberg is 10% of what people see and of who we are as people. And all they can see is that top of the iceberg. But unless you realize that there's 90% of that iceberg underneath the waterline, giving the lift, the texture, the buoyancy, then you've missed the reality of your identity as a pastor. Because your identity, your authority, who you are, even your preaching comes from that deep bottom of the iceberg, 90% identity of who you are. And then it manifests itself in the visible dimension of that 10% of your life that is your activity and your performance. So in effect, what we're talking about here is recognizing that the pastor's life really is coming from within, Power comes from within. Authority comes from within, not in how you parse words or how you handle terms or decisions. It comes from deep within. Even in the area of preaching, your life is the message. Now, each week or however often you preach, you're giving word, you're bringing to voice the message of God that has found deep root in your life. And that's where the power comes from. Not just your ability to speak well or smoothly, or with right intonation, or welcoming or motivating language. It comes from within. So you see, this inside-out principle is very important in understanding the pastor's life. Now, I remember when I was going through seminary, we were always told that we should separate our personal life from our ministry life. Compartmentalize. Don't take your work home. Keep your children and your family separated and protected, right? Keep your ministry here and don't let it bleed into or encumber or encroach upon your family. When my wife and I got married, we decided that we felt that it should be a little different than that. And in fact, we decided that we needed to integrate everything. Because if we are holistic, integrated people, then what we do derives from who we are. And who we are is formed largely in terms of our family system, our children, our relationship one with another. So we can't really compartmentalize, because in our thinking, that compartmentalization is a formula for segregation or separation, and then we create two separate worlds. And that can easily lead to failure, to a moral break, to a segregation to the point where we live one life here and another life here. So the idea of integration of life, so that we are bringing together who we are, including our family life, with what we do in our ministry. That's the holistic, integrated nature of the pastor's life. Now, admittedly, there are lines of propriety that we certainly want to observe. We don't bring all of the gory details of some of the things going on at the church or going on in the ministry at home to talk about at the dinner table with 5-year-olds or 7-year-olds or even teenagers. There is propriety. But neither do we protect them from some of the pressures, the nuances, the currents, and often some of the difficulties and pains of ministry. That's part of integrating life and actually deriving strength from them. I have often leaned upon my children's prayers for difficulties in my ministry. My wife has leaned upon our children's advice and wisdom and prayers for things that we are walking through. You see, integration. In our lives, one of the ways that we've done that is to, for example, include family trips. In my ministry, when I had the responsibility to supervise a variety of churches in other locations, it would be very easy for me to leave the kids home, go visit the church, do my work, and then return home and segregate those. We decided, let's give them the opportunity to see what Dad does. Let's give them the opportunity to enjoy the benefits of being in kingdom work. Let's give them the opportunity of meeting people they never would meet otherwise. Let's give them the opportunity to participate in the work of God. Not that we're asking them to do something that we shouldn't be asking them to do, other than being a child or a teenager. But we want them as part of our lives as we do what God has called us to do. And in that way, the integrated nature provides for a holistic understanding of ministry. And I got to tell you that in our family, we are so grateful for that, because our children have seen the world. Our children have seen things they never would have the opportunity to see if it weren't for the fact that our family was in ministry. Certainly, I'm the one called to pastoral ministry, but by integrating family, which defines a large part of who I am, with that ministry, they get the benefits of horse camp, travel, seeing the country, seeing the world, meeting people who are gracious and wonderful, understanding the diversity and the nature of the church, and capturing the true deep spirit of God's mission in the world as they have experienced this wide variety of seeing how ministry is done. So may I encourage you to live your life from the inside out, even at the point of your marriage and your family. Decompartmentalize appropriately, but decompartmentalize your life and allow who you are to become your ministry. So this time, I'd like to suggest, or I'd like to ask you in your journal or in your homework, so to speak, take time to reflect and write examples of how you might integrate your family or your personal life in your ministry in healthy and constructive ways, and see how God begins to weave together this holistic nature of God's call to pastoral ministry. God be with you.